Well, I have to say, this is a nice place you got here.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you.
It's great. Well, let's talk a little politics.
Okay.
Florida primary coming up. You said a while back there that if the Republicans didn't pick the right candidate, you might still get in. Are you still thinking about that in any way?
Well, I am thinking about it, Bob. We'll see what happens. This is a very critical time for this country. The country is going to hell in a handbasket. What's going on is unbelievable. Other countries are just coming up like rockets, and we're going down. We're no longer competitive in so many different ways, and we're in trouble. As a nation, we're in trouble. We owe, as you know, we owe $15 trillion, a number that was unthinkable, and lots of other problems. So if they don't pick the right candidate, I would absolutely think about running as soon as The Apprentice ends, which is going to be sometime in May.
So if you ran, would you try to get into the Republican race, or would you run as an independent?
It would have to be as an independent. I would be precluded, and sadly I'm precluded from running now because of the show. If I didn't have the show, I probably would have maybe just kept going because I was doing well. As you know, I was leading in the polls. But I probably would have just continued on as I was doing. And I actually enjoyed it. I loved the process, as nasty as it was. So I would probably have to do it as an independent.
So what's going on now that you don't like about this race? What would cause you to do this?
Well, first of all, it's a very nasty race. I've never seen anything like this. It's Republican against Republican, and yet the level of hatred, I guess you could say, I mean, there's no other word for it, is unbelievable. And the question is, are they hurting themselves? Are they hurting the party? Are they hurting the Republicans? And are they hurting their chances of winning an election against Barack Obama? And probably the answer is yes, other than there's a possibility that with all of the press and all of the media attention and, keep going, somebody's going to emerge, and maybe they're going to emerge much stronger. So we'll have to see. Only time will tell. But it's very possible that they're hurting themselves.
Have any of them asked for your help?
They really want my help, and they really want my endorsement. All my life I've been involved in the political system, and people always wanted my money. Now they don't want my money, they want my endorsement. So yes, they would. Mitt and Newt in particular really want my endorsement.
Would you think of endorsing either one of them?
It's possible, and probably if it happens, it'll be over the next month or so, but it certainly would be possible.
Tell me their pluses and minuses. What do you like about Romney?
Well, things are changing a little bit. I really loved about, as an example, Newt, his debating ability, and he would be the first to say the last two debates weren't that great. I was a little bit surprised. He wasn't the same man that I watched in the previous debates. At the same time, he's got great ideas. He's very smart. He's very tough. And he is a great debater, although he had two that weren't good, in particular the last one. I didn't think he did very well, and he didn't think he did very well. But he is a man of great vision, lots of ideas, but he has some baggage, as we all know. And then you have Mitt, who I thought did very well, in particular in the last debate. He's got, the obvious things, whether it's health care in Massachusetts or whatever. I'm not sure. I think that's been so played out. I'm not so sure that's a liability anymore. But he's a solid guy, has a great presidential look, which, whether we like it or not, is an asset. And I think he's really coming on pretty strong. I think he's doing very well. I think Newt's doing very well. I mean, Newt came from nowhere. On your show, I was watching that show, and it looked like it was over. And, you wouldn't have said a few months ago that he'd be fighting it out for first place. So they're both strong guys. They're both tough guys. And I think if they win, they perhaps would have a very good chance of winning the election.
Mitt Romney seems a little uncomfortable with his wealth. That really never bothered you. Should he be more willing to talk about that than he is?
Well, I think he was uncomfortable with it until the last debate. The last debate, he started getting out there and saying, hey, look, I did a great job. I made money. I didn't inherit anything, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought he was very effective in the last debate in terms of that. I mean, I'm very proud of what I've done. As an example, we're at Mar-a-Lago, which was going to be torn down 20 some odd years ago, and I saved it, and now it's a club, and it employs thousands. I mean, just literally what we're doing is amazing. Tonight we have the Red Cross Ball. We're going to raise millions of dollars for the Red Cross, and we do a lot of good work. I mean, that's something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of all the people that we employ here, and we have many businesses like this. And I agree with you. I think that Mitt was really hesitant about what he did. And I really think he came out of that in the last debate. I thought he was much more forceful in many ways, but also about his success. I mean, the American dream is a great thing. That's what it's all about. Everybody wants the American dream. And if you've sort of done well, I think it's okay to talk about it.
Well, what do you think they're doing wrong right now? Because obviously you're still thinking about, well, maybe I ought to get into this thing. What is it that's making you think that?
Well, I just think it's really important. And, you know, I look at the different polls, and one of the big things is, can they win? I just think it's really important for whoever's chosen to be able to win. And I happen to think that an independent, the right independent, and there wouldn't be very many of them, but the right independent could actually win today. Today we have a situation, if you look at Ross Perot, he was doing great until he self-destructed. I mean, he totally self-destructed. But until he self-destructed, he was actually leading. And we have much more troubled times today, and I think, you know, people dislike the Democrats and the Republicans more than they ever have. So I actually think the right independent could win. And there was a poll about a month ago, you saw it, where I was the #1 independent choice. Now, it's not, I love my business. I love what I'm doing. I love this whole thing of what Donald Trump does. It's not something I want to do. I'd love to see a candidate come along who's going to go up. But if I don't see a person that #1 is going to win, that's tantamount. I would certainly think about doing it after the show ends.
So if you did run, what would your campaign be about?
It would be about making this country great again. We're really not great any longer. When was the last time you saw a major bridge being built in this country, or a great highway? We don't do anything anymore. The environmentalists stop everything from happening. And I've gotten many, many environmental awards. I'm a very big person environmentally. I do very nicely. But when I see some of the projects that are stopped for absolutely no reason, harbors that are going to take 8 years and 9 years to get an approval because a permit is going to take 7 years to get. And, you know, I just look at the kind of things that's happening. And when I go to China and I see bridges being built all over, I mean, and China's the least of it. You go to some of the OPEC nations, you go and take a look at what they're doing. I mean, their roads are paved in gold. Our roads are potholed and messed up, and our bridges are falling down. So we really have to get this country going again. The pipeline, I think, was a terrible decision. Whether you're a liberal, whether you're conservative, whether you're an environmentalist, doesn't matter. That was just a terrible decision. And I actually think that from Obama's standpoint, it was a bad political decision. I actually think he hurt himself politically. He didn't help himself, he hurt himself.
Where would you get the money for all this, Mr. Trump?
Money for what?
For building all these bridges and roads and...
Well, you have to get the country back. You have to start rebuilding this country instead of Afghanistan, instead of Iraq. Iraq did not knock down the World Trade Center. I'm a person that believes strongly in the military. I want to build up the military. We need a military more than we ever have because, unfortunately, many parts of the world truly hate us. But we have to know where the target is. And when we invest $1.5 trillion in Iraq, and essentially, we're going to be handing Iraq over to Iran because eventually they're just going to walk in and take it because it's there for the taking. They have the second largest oil reserves in the world. And why didn't we take some of the oil? Why didn't we take it? And, you know, I say that, and a lot of people say, oh, that's terrible. And a lot of people say, gee, that's very smart. You know, it was interesting. When we first went to Iraq, smart people said, oh, we're there for the oil. Unfortunately, we weren't there for the oil. We were there for nobody knows why we're there. And now it's blowing up right in front of your eyes. So Iran will take over Iraq, and they'll take over these massive oil reserves, and it's a very sad thing. And what I did say, and I said very strongly, and a lot of people agree with me, and I guess some people don't, but while we were there, we should have taken oil, and we should have taken care of the families where you have lost soldiers, great, great young people that are gone, or they lost their arms, or they lost their legs, or they had worse happen to them. And I actually said each family would get $3 million, $4 million, or $5 million, which, by the way, is peanuts compared to the kind of numbers you're talking about. And nobody picked up the mantle, and I never understood it. I never understood it. There's so many things this country, I mean, you look at Gaddafi and Libya and how the rebels come in. And by the way, that whole thing is just blowing up right now. We go in, spend billions of dollars. Why didn't we say, we'll do it? They were being routed, Bob. You know that. They were being routed. They came to us, they wanted help. Why didn't we say, we're going to give you help. We want 50% of your oil. They would have said, whatever you want, boom. Instead, we just say, oh, we'll help you. Now, we don't even know who they are, and they've taken over the country, and now it's blowing up also. We miss so many great and easy decisions. So our country is mired in debt. We borrow money from China to pay for all sorts of things. You know who the biggest beneficiary in Afghanistan is China, because they're taking the minerals out of Afghanistan. We're taking nothing out. So it's a very sad situation what's happening to the country. And I do say that, and I say many other things, and somehow it resonates with a lot of people, and that's why they, would like me to run. It's not something I want to do, but that's also why the candidates want my endorsement, because I do have millions of people that agree with what I say. I don't know if they like me or not. I don't really care if they like me. They like what I say.
What about the income tax inequity that some people talk about? They talk about the Buffett rule and all of that. What's your take on all of that? Are rich people paying their fair share?
Well, rich people are paying most of the taxes in the United States, but the problem that a lot of people have, it's not paying more tax, it's how the government is spending the money. I mean, they're squandering the money. I mean, why are we spending $535 billion on Solyndra? Why are we spending all of $535 million on Solyndra? It's ridiculous. Why are we spending hundreds and hundreds of millions? It's like the United States is supposed to be a private equity group. They don't like what's happening, and they're really concerned. They're going to raise taxes, and I think they should be cutting expenses. We have billions and billions and billions of dollars of waste. You mentioned before the Woolman skating rink. I mean, it took the city 7 years to find out they couldn't build it. I did it in 3 months at a cost of about 10% of what they thought it was going to cost. And when you look at the country, that's basically what's happening. We're spending trillions of dollars. They can't get together and cut $1 trillion, and they have to cut 5, 6, or 7 trillion. So we're really in a lot of trouble as a country, and it just can't continue to go on this way.
When you talk about that, you're talking about the skating rink. This was the first time I ever interviewed you, way back there. City of New York was having trouble getting that skating rink built in Central Park. You took over the project and did get it done in 3 months. It was a remarkable thing.
Well, they worked 7 years, and it actually became a case study in a lot of business schools to this day. So it's great, but it's not me. It's private enterprise. It's people going out and working 24 hours a day to get something done, and it's a great thing. And that's what the country has to do. We have to get back to that.
So what about the tax rates, though? Would you overhaul the tax system?
Well, for one thing, the tax system is too complicated. I mean, beyond everything else. You look at tax returns. I think one of the major companies had a 78,000-page tax return. 78,000 pages for a tax return. It's too complicated, it's too cumbersome, too expensive, and it should be simplified at a minimum. We really have to cut expenses. The one problem with raising taxes is we have a very weak and very, very fragile economy. And whether anybody likes it or not, it's not a great time to be raising taxes because it does create a disincentive. So, I mean, I'd like to see everybody, rich, poor, middle, I'd like to see everybody's taxes cut. What I'd like to see is the expenses really cut because we're spending trillions of dollars that we really don't have. We're borrowing it from China and other countries.
So let me make sure I understand this. You may endorse one of these candidates.
Correct.
If you do that, does that mean then that you definitely would not run as an independent? Or?
If that candidate wins, absolutely. If that candidate would get the nomination, I absolutely would not run. But obviously, if that candidate wouldn't, I'm a free agent. I'm a free agent after May, and we'll see what happens. And I must tell you, I really enjoyed, you know that, I really enjoyed the process. It was nasty, it was mean. They try and take a great deal that was done and make it look bad. And now I watch what's happening to all these, you know, they'll take a great deal and they'll make it look bad. They'll take a bad deal and make it look even worse. But I really enjoyed the process. I loved going up to New Hampshire. I loved doing everything I was doing, and I was having a lot of fun doing it, but I'd rather do what I'm doing now. I mean, I built a great company, a great business. I actually, in my book that just came out, I actually published my net worth because I did my financial disclosure forms thinking I may very well do this, and I'm getting ready for it, potentially. And I published my net worth statement. And, you know, it was because I'm a private person, nobody really knew. They were the summary pages, and everybody said, wow, that's really a great company. Lots of cash, very little debt, and tremendous net worth. That's what the country should have.
But you're telling me you're really serious about it, and you may, depending on what happens, you may get into this thing after all.
I hope I don't have to, but I may. Absolutely. The number one thing for me is this country. Our country is in a lot of trouble. So I may. I hope I don't have to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. It's a great honor.